Hey, everybody. I think we can do better than that. Hey, everybody. Hey. All right, I know this is a rough slot. This is after lunch. It's always the toughest time, but I see lots of Red Bull cans, so I'm thinking we should be okay. So welcome to my talk. I'm PJ. If you want to take pictures, my Twitter handle is up there. You can get me at all of those wonderful informational spots. Real quick, I work at a place called Logs.io. We do Elk Stack as a service. We're used by startup and enterprise. We do cognitive insights through AI. It's cool. I have stickers and business cards up here. Feel free to take them at the end. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Let's talk about me, because I'm awesome. So I'm a developer advocate. And for those of you who don't know what that means I am a developer who also goes out and speaks a lot at conferences. But beyond that, I'm a dad. I play in a band. I've been playing drums since I was 6 years old, so I can't stop at this point. Thank you. I'm an ice hockey coach, and occasionally I let my daughter keynote at conferences. This is a picture of her at RubyConf when she was 11 years old. She was the other keynoter. The first keynoter was Matt's, who created Ruby, so that's the kind of level she's at. I'm not at that level, but she's pretty good. Also, I run a little thing called Prompt. Prompt is a mental health and tech organization where we help speakers who talk about mental health get on stage at conferences like this so that we can address the issues of mental health, which is something a lot of us don't like to talk about, but we really should be. So if you're interested in that, please check out mhprompt.org. Enough of the advertising. This is what this talk is about. So, there's lots of different languages that people use. I'm going to go over a few of them. And because of that, you kind of end up being involved in a few different communities. We also kind of have this idea that what we do is better than what other people do, or other people look down upon the things that we do, and we need to get rid of that. We want to make a better tech community. There's also kind of that perception between people who do open source and people who do enterprise work, that there's a difference, and there shouldn't be. Now, I know the talk was urban legends, but this talk won't actually be about urban legends. So no Bigfoot, no Tyler Durden, no Loch Ness Monster, no chupacabras. We're going to try to steer away from that. So let's start in my favorite place, Ruby. How many of you have done Ruby before? Yeah, I know you have. Cool. So Ruby's awesome, right? The one problem is it kind of has this attitude. A lot of people think that people that do Ruby are kind of hipster developers that don't do much on the side, and everything's really easy for people that do Ruby because, there's this great framework called Rails. Oh, Rails is amazing. You can do anything you want with Rails, and 90% of the work is done in 10% of the time. Isn't it amazing? It's so great, Rails. And Rails is great. Rails is a very vibrant community. It's a very vocal community that happens to have a guy heading it who has a very large mouth and a very quick Twitter finger. And it's interesting because half the stuff that he tweets has nothing to do with Ruby or Rails. It has to do with politics and racing cars, which has nothing to do with tech community at all. But because of his attitudes, a lot of people have assumed, oh, Rubyists are snobs, they're elitists. They think that they know better than other programming languages, even though they just came around a few years ago. It's kind of a big deal. So one of the key things I like to bust is that Ruby is not Rails. There's so much more to the Ruby community. There's other frameworks you can use to get Ruby on the web. There's Hanami, there's Sinatra, there's all these great tools that you can use. There's Trailblazer that puts an additional abstraction layer on top of Rails. So many great things that people are contributing. And it makes Ruby useful. Unfortunately, people still have this idea that Ruby is for hipsters. Take this in for a second. Just read this. I saw this comic a while ago, and it just cracked me up. So here's this guy, got the hat on, got the Ruby t-shirt on, got the beard, talking about how he made this awesome single-source espresso app for South of Market in San Francisco, which I don't live in San Francisco, so I could not possibly give a shit less. By the way, I will swear a couple times. I hope that doesn't offend anybody. But basically, he made the most useless app in the world. And this other guy's like, cool, I built the app that keeps this plane flying. Okay, so Ruby apps don't exactly keep airplanes flying. But at the same time, contrary to the fact that I am wearing a hat and I do have a beard and I do Ruby, that's not every Ruby developer. To even represent it like that is really unfair. Ruby is actually a really strong language. It's used in all of these companies. A lot of these I visit on a daily basis. How many people use Zendesk for ticketing at their company? It's a pretty commonly used thing. That's all written in Ruby and Rails. Urban Dictionary, I use that shit every day just so I can understand what my teenagers are saying because it makes more sense that way. But if Ruby was so weak and just for hipster bullshit apps, why are these companies using it? It's kind of a big deal. So let's go on to the ultimate enemy of Ruby, PHP. First of all, the idea that PHP and Ruby are enemies is preposterous. This isn't high school. This isn't, you know, my playground's bigger than your playground, or I make more money than you because I have a different, you know, dot something at the end of all of my files. It's ridiculous. We're all working towards a goal. Programmers work to solve problems. This is about knowing how to use your tool sets, not about which tools you use making you who you are. So one of the interesting things I found when researching this talk, you're going to see the word dead a lot. So when I started doing Ruby, at the time I was a Visual Fox Pro developer. Any Visual Fox Pro developers out there? If you are, I know you're keeping your hands down because that's fucking embarrassing. Yeah, it was a horrible thing. And on the side of that, I also did PHP. So we started, the company I was working for, we started working with these Ruby guys. And they're like, you're doing PHP? That is so dead. This was 11 years ago. Like, PHP is dead. Nobody uses PHP anymore. PHP runs 80% of the internet. Like, it's on 80% of the servers on the internet. And even going back to Ruby and Rails, there are PHP files in the deep down center code of both Ruby and Rails. There are PHP files there. And I mean, it's used for like importing from other programs, but it's still there. You still have to use it. So if it's dead, why is it so widely used? Abused, sure. Every language is abused, but it's also widely used. So next question always comes up is like, oh, well, if it's used, well, why isn't it object-oriented? PHP is not an object-oriented language, and this is totally 100% true if, big if, you stopped using PHP at version 4.0. Because before, 4.0 and before, it wasn't really object-oriented. It was a web scripting language. It really wasn't as powerful as it is now. But, use, what are we at, PHP 7 now? Don't ask about 7.1. Don't ask about 6. That's a whole other issue. They have lots of problems with that in the PHP community. But it's all object-oriented because in some minds, object-oriented is the way to go. Some people prefer functional. Some people prefer object-oriented. PHP wanted to go object-oriented. And they've gotten the performance and the things that they needed out of becoming object-oriented. Awesome. So that's a complete myth. There's no objects in PHP. PHP is slow. Not really. I found this amazing because, coming from the background of a Ruby developer, I had done Ruby for 7 years, 8 years before I even started researching this talk. And Ruby is slow. But there's also this concept of slow that we as developers have, like, holy crap, that took 0.007 milliseconds? That's too slow. Can you count a millisecond? You've already missed it. You've missed your opportunity. Forget it. It's gone. It's a millisecond. 9 times out of 10, unless you have severe issues, that's never going to add up enough to where someone's not going to use your application anymore. Milliseconds are not important to a user. 4 seconds is what's important to a user. If you got into 4 seconds, there's something fundamentally wrong with the way you program, not with what language you're using. Another one that I found is PHP is not secure. This is a total misnomer, and I could have put any other language. I could have said Ruby has security issues, or Rails has security issues, Java has security issues, everything. Security is really about how you build things. It has nothing to do with what language you use. If you're not building with an eye towards security, and when I say security, I don't mean like a decent authentication system. I mean like you're trying to avoid cross-site scripting. You're looking to make sure that the things you're using, like, in the Ruby ecosystem, we have gems. Make sure your gems aren't malicious. Make sure they're not writing things in plain text that don't need to be in plain text. If you're not coding with an eye towards security, the language does not matter. So is PHP insecure? Yes, if your PHP developer doesn't know how to program with an eye towards security, then it's 100% true. If that's the case, get a new PHP developer. It has nothing to do with the language, it has to do with the programmer. Let's go to another one, Java. Is anybody Java? Any Java programmers out there? Do you like it? You kept your hand right, like, there's one guy in the back, he's like, yeah, I like Java, it's all right. Java's really cool, and the thing about Java is it's another, dead language that's going away, apparently, whatever. No one uses Java for anything of any importance, except for, bank machines, ATMs, every computer I've ever used. All kinds of like huge industrial enterprise applications are written in Java because it's extremely powerful. Is it cantankerous? Is it hard to use? Yeah, it takes practice. Most languages do. But at the same time, it's not dead and it's not going away. I mean, Lord knows every other day I get a pop-up that's like, you need to update your Java. It's like, but I don't want to. Because it never happens when I'm doing something like watching Netflix or something like that. It's like when I'm like trying to write an application and my tests aren't passing. And I'm like, shit, I don't want to update Java right now. She's up there. Sorry, there was some waving going on. So Java is still huge, even though people say, I hate Java. Like, you'll hear this more often than anything. I hate Java. I don't want to work in Java. Maybe if you try Java again, you'd learn a little something. Let's go on to Python. What's Python used for? Does anybody know? How many people have done code in Python? All right, fair few. Python's pretty cool. But for a long time when Python came out, there was this concept that Python was strictly for academics and mathematics. Like, there was PySci and PyMath, and that's what you used it for. You wanted to build things so that you could explore the further nether regions of the machine and all these kind of conceptual things. And it's amazing to me that, like, even before all the frameworks came out for Python, people thought, oh, this is just strictly a mechanical thing. It's for academic use to make proof of concept kind of stuff. I would never code a production application, a commercial application, if you will, in Python. You just don't do that. Sure, okay. So let me tell you a little story. I used to work at a company called Engine Yard. Has anybody ever heard of Engine Yard? Well, I know you have, and you have. I mean, the two people that I already know here, I know they know what Engine Yard is. I used to never shut up about it. Now I don't work there, so I can, whatever. At Engine Yard, we were big about giving back to the community, so we decided we'd build a little application. Do y'all remember the program GitTip? It was like a website. You could go to it and like sign up people's names and be like, I really like Sandy Metz. Sandy Metz is really cool, and I know that she works freelance, so I would like to give back to her like, $10 a month. And if enough people gave back, she got like $500 a month, which is pretty cool. We decided we wanted to give back, but we wanted to do this in this kind of distributed way. Like, we had a list of people we would love to give back to in projects. So we wrote code in Python. And we said, all right, cool. So we've got our little YAML file that says who gets the money. We've got this little thing that automatically pushes it from our credit card to GitTip. And these people get money, and everybody's happy. Hooray! That's not academic. That's not mechanical. That's just like pure community interaction with a nice little script. I'll give you another example. So was anybody here at RailsConf last year? No, just me? Okay, that's cool. I thought it seemed empty. This gentleman from Spotify gave a talk. And it was really cool. They use a lot of Python at Spotify. And there's no way you're going to tell me Spotify is academic. And some of the amazing things that they were doing with their Python APIs. For example, they did a thing called frog boiling. And the way frog boiling works is you pick a song, you pick two artists. Like, let's say you pick Katy Perry and Amon Amarth, who, if you don't know, that's Viking death metal from Finland. And what it would do is go through this Python program and find only 8 songs. So from Katy Perry to Amon Amarth, 8 songs in between them to prove that there are similarities in them. And by the time you listen to all these songs, you'd be like, okay, maybe they're not so far apart. That's really interesting. Hardly academic. Hardly academic. So Linux, not a programming language. But it does kind of get a very, very bad shake from time to time. I'm sure, what is this, 2017, year of the Linux desktop? We're going to go for that this year? We're going to even say it? Are we done? Did you just say yeah? Come on. Come on. Come on. We should all know better. Linux is never going to be the ultimate desktop. It's just not. But Linux does the most amazing things. But there's this perception of the Linux community. Dudes, all dudes, there's no women in the Linux community, in their basements, with neck beards. So not even like a cool beard like mine, which I'm sure you're all appreciating right now, but like that thing that goes like just there, and their chin is still visible. It's very bizarre. They do this all for free. By the way, the basement that they work in, not theirs, their parents'. And they're basically trying to cobble a few packages together, hoping for some donations so they have enough litter and food to take care of their 50 cats. That's a Linux developer, right? That's when I say Linux, everybody's like, shit, yeah, that's me. Not the case. Well, I jokingly said this isn't the year of the Linux desktop. Like, think about all of the servers you use. Think about even, AWS. You're using Ubuntu, you're using Debian, you're using all that stuff in the background. There's almost no way to get your stuff online at this point without using Linux. Whether you know it or not, maybe you're not the person who deploys. Maybe you're using a platform or something like that deploys somewhere else. Either way, you're using Linux. Most of us are. So let's move on to Perl. Perl, is Perl dead? This is somebody wrote this blog post, because I wrote a blog post I had spent a year, traveling to I went to like 23 conferences, most of them Ruby conferences, and almost every Ruby conference I went to, there was like a panel discussion or some person up on stage, and they were like, hey, Ruby is dead, and here's why. And it's like, what? So I wrote this article. I'm like, here's why it isn't, because maturity doesn't equal death. It just means stability. So Perl is dead. I don't know why the Perl community felt the need. I'm surprised they even read it. I don't even read my own blog posts. But they read this, and they were like, they felt the need to respond. So is Perl dead, or is it just deader than Ruby? No, Perl's not dead. Just came out with a new version. Yes, it took a long time. We know. Larry is aware of the pain for Perl developers. But he wanted to make the best possible thing. So those of us who were patient and continued to code in Perl got a great gift a little while ago, and like have this awesome version of Perl now that's really fun and easy to use. So no, not dead. Super myth. So it's not always about the new hotness. That's basically my point. I saw this tweet. It was from a while ago. And I feel the need to include this because it's like, I looked at this for, no lie, 25 minutes I sat there staring at this tweet, and I was like, what in the fuck? I get the point. They're trying to say Swift is the most amazing thing in the world, and Objective-C just isn't that important anymore. Great. But let's think about the image that they had here. So we'll go from right to left. So I understand that, okay, this is an Objective-C developer, and you're saying that they're obsolete. Cool. Got it. Not true. You're kind of an ass for saying it. Nonetheless, you said it. Pregnant women. Why are pregnant women obsolete? I'm gonna put forth a crazy theory here. I know I'm from the US, so bear with me. Without pregnant women, we don't get any more people. And if we don't have people, none of this has any point at all. So pregnant women also not obsolete. The elderly. No, we could learn so much from the elderly. Let's face it, most of the languages that we use, all of them actually, are written by people that would oftentimes be considered elderly. I mean, you go back to Perl, Larry's like in his 70s. In Ruby, Matt's he's in his late 50s. Rasmus, he's got to be, I don't know, he's probably hitting 50 at this point too. Like all of these people in some context, especially in the startup world, would be considered elderly. Shit, in San Francisco, I'm considered elderly. I'm over 40. So it's not always about the new hotness, and you can't just start slamming other languages because you have this great new thing. Here's another great example. Anything with a JS on it. This was like a super cool thing like 2 or 3 years ago. It's like, holy shit, I could put JS on anything and make it amazing. And like, how many of you know what these things really do? Neckbeard JS. It's probably for Linux developers. Kraken JS. Anyone want to take a guess at what Kraken JS does? It's a payment portal producer that PayPal created. Kraken totally describes what it does. Bacon JS. I don't know, invades other countries and gives them diseases. I don't really know. Doge JS. Why not? Because we put a Doge on everything. And I don't mean to knock JavaScript languages. Like Node is amazing. Node is absolutely amazing. Ember is amazing, super powerful. Angular is totally available for you to use. And you could do these things, but we don't have to just automatically be like, you know what, I can easily create a JavaScript language that does one thing, and then start using that exclusively. At the same time, there's so many more languages that are coming around all the time. There's Go and Rust and Elixir and Julia, Scala, and all of these really cool things. I put Erlang on there. It's not new. It's an older functional programming language, but it's absolutely amazing. And these things don't get the same hang time of the PHPs and the Perls and the Rubies, but they're really neat. And the reason why I bring it up is you should try these things out. There might be something you could learn from these other languages. I know that whenever I go into another language, at this point in time in my career, because Ruby is what I've programmed the longest, I always go in with like the Ruby eyeball in. So I'm like, how does this work like Ruby? It doesn't, but it's actually this whole compiling thing is not so bad as I remember it to be. Maybe it's kind of cool. It's really neat. And you can learn new things. You can learn better how your own language works by looking at another language. That's what it's about. It's about evolution. I'll give you an example. So I work for a company called Logs.io. Logs.io is Elk Stack as a service. It didn't start that way. It started with 2 guys who were working at a company who were like, shit, I can't see what's going on with any of my logs. And this Elasticsearch is kind of cool, and Logstash is okay, I guess, and Kibana has really neat visualizations. Why don't I put it all together? Oh, wait, I can actually package this and make it into a thing. Let's put it on a server. We'll put it on our own bare metal server. No, wait, let's go to the cloud. Each step of the way was an evolution. That's how you reach success. Learning new things from other fields, other places, and combining them. So let's get to the second part of this talk, about communities. Communities is my favorite thing. That's why I do what I do. I get to go places. I get to go all over the world. I got to come to Italy. Never been to Italy before. Some people said Rome isn't Italy. I don't know what that means. I guess like saying like Austin, Texas isn't Texas. That one I understand. But I mean, everybody here is speaking Italian and shit, so seems pretty Italian to me. I don't know. But so I mean, communities are interesting. Like, and I like this diagram because in a lot of ways, this kind of expresses the way the tech community works. Like, yes, they're all interlaced and they are all part of tech. But let's say that the red folks are Rubyists and the green folks do Perl and the blue folks do PHP. And you see how like they're not actually talking to each other. They're just in their own little circle. Glass houses. This is not how community should work. So like I said, I travel a lot, and I'm lucky enough I get to talk to a lot of people. So here's some really messed up shit I've heard people say. And I'm going to read them straight out and explain to you why they're wrong. Designers aren't developers. They shouldn't be at hardcore tech meetups or conferences. This I always find interesting. How many of you are designers? I applaud you. Because I'll tell you right now, I could sit here and build an app really quickly that is totally functional and all the tests pass and it's in Times New Roman and everything's black on white and it looks like shit and no one will ever use it until I talk to a designer because I can't code that. So don't tell me that it's not hardcore. It's hardcore. Design is hardcore. It is difficult. If it was that easy, we'd all be doing it, and we're not. That's why we have special people called designers, and they're probably more important than we are. This actually came out of the mouth of someone I worked with at Engineered. Sysadmins can live without developers. What do we need them for? And I was like, so let's back that shit up, right, real quick. You're saying to me that you can do this without developers. Uh-huh. Okay, cool. So if you don't have any developers building applications, what are all these servers for? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a relationship that just like designers and developers, sysadmins, DevOps folks, and developers kind of got to go hand in hand or it doesn't work out. Business folks just don't get developers. This came up because I had a guy who, he wasn't a recruiter, he was just interested in tech, but he also worked for a tech company, so every once in a while he'd be like, hey, we have a position open at one of the meetups that I run. And everyone's like, man, Jeff's not the same as us. Jeff's different. And I'm like, okay, nerd, listen. He's interested, he's passionate, he wants to learn more. How does that make him different from you? Yes, he comes from a different background. Yes, it's not the same. But if someone's interested and passionate, then what you should do is embrace them, not tell them to go take a hike. And the last one's my favorite one. Tech people are socially inept, all of them. My response to this is like, who are you talking to? Like, I'm one of the most outgoing people that I know. And I mean, yeah, that was the most egotistical thing I've probably ever said. But yes, I'm very outgoing. I didn't come from a tech background, sure. I come from a different place, but you know, I learned tech and I love it. And I love to get up and talk and meet people. I love meeting everybody at a conference if that's possible. It's my favorite thing. So as far as social ineptitude, yeah, not everybody's willing to get up on stage and speak. That does not mean we are socially inept. That's ridiculous. Cross-pollination. This is a very complicated biological diagram. It just seemed to fit with the whole cross-pollination thing. The idea is, just like with the languages, we need to go into other communities. We need to experience what they're experiencing, feel their pain points, but also learn what they're learning to understand how we can make our own inner communities better. So that diagram where everybody was alone standing in their glass house, we need to get rid of that. Start throwing stones, knock down all the glass, and start talking to other people. Build a tech community, not a Ruby community or a PHP community. Build a tech community. And it'd be awesome. I mean, that's why I love conferences like this. There's so many different things going on, and they're all important to tech. And you should really stretch out and go to the talk that's about IoT, even though you've never done an IoT thing in your life. You might learn something. It might be cool. So finally, open source and the enterprise. Who here works for an enterprise company? I don't. I'm just raising my hand as an example of raising your hand. Who works for an open source company? Okay. Who knows the difference? You do? Yeah, I mean, like it's a total gray area, buzzwordy kind of BS kind of thing, like open source versus the enterprise. All it means is like, are you using a proprietary language that no one's allowed to use? Or are you using something that everyone's allowed to use and you're allowed to contribute back to? That's really what it is, and it brings us back to this comic. My favorite comic. It's like, yeah, that guy is like, he totally built the app for the plane. He works for an enterprise company. He totally does, because there's no airline that would be like, no, I will totally accept your open source contribution. But he's totally discounting this guy who probably knows a lot about open source creativity because he built a bullshit coffee app. Whatever. These two could probably learn from each other. I mean, we have that idea of open source people, again, in the basement, chugging away, trying to feed the cats, doing the best they can, hoping something like Ruby Together will give them a little bit of money because they built something for Bundler. Whatever. And then, of course, the enterprise dev is chugging away, business, 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 working in a gray cubicle with many other people who are working in a gray cubicle to build products for people who live in other gray cubicles to use so that we could have more gray cubicles. That's generally the impression. I worked at IBM for a year, at Bluemix actually, they're here. And it was funny how many times I would go out and I'd be like, I'm from IBM Bluemix, and people would be like, no, you're not, you're wearing jeans. It'd be like, that's not how that works. Like, I can wear jeans and still go up on stage and still work at IBM, believe it or not. But yeah, there's things that we can learn. Like, we need to learn that there's things that each side has. The enterprise can teach open source a lot about organization, a lot about proper use of code and compatibilities and backwards compatibility and things like that. Enterprise runs on that. That's their most important value. At the same time, we could talk a lot about, like, I'll use stupid words like artisanal coding and organic coding. Things, things that are artistic and creative that the open source world gets to do because we can stretch our wings in any direction. There's no one there to stop us. And enterprise could learn from that, making it so that it's not just a hard chug. You're not worried about, am I writing 500 lines of code a day to meet a quota? Am I creating something of value? That's the question both sides want to answer. Am I creating something of value? Am I solving problems? Programmers essentially work on puzzles. That's why we do what we do. The tools don't matter. The office you're in doesn't matter. Are you solving the problem that was set before you? That's what's important. So what else? I always find this interesting because one of the things that we do in tech is we always think everything's such a huge deal. It's like, oh, I deployed and stuff's not working and it was down for 2 minutes. But I meant to add this to my slide. I saw a very interesting point the other day where a friend of mine who works at Red Hat mentioned that his wife is a physician's assistant in the US. And she came home one day and he was like, man, stuff didn't go right. My test didn't pass. The CI server kicked it out. Nothing got deployed. Man, it was a rough day. She goes, yeah, a guy died today. I would be willing to bet there's very few of us in this room who actually are working on something that's going to affect someone's life in that way, like in a it's the end or I'm going to make it kind of way. We don't. What we do is really cool, but it's not life or death. So what we need to do is, again, change perspectives. The ninja rockstar wizard shit has to stop. This whole idea that there's something special about us, like, yes, we're cool, and what we do is really neat, but at the same time, like, we're not so super awesome that we're more important than the rest of the world. There is no such thing as a wizard, as far as I know. If you're a rock star, you should really be up on stage, playing an instrument, singing, doing something to thousands of people, and not here at this conference. Like, you should be asleep right now because you were out so late last night being a rock star. If you're a ninja, I don't know, there could be ninjas in this room. They're ninjas, so I can't tell. They're very good at this whole hiding thing, but I haven't seen any ninjas. And I definitely have never seen a rockstar wizard ninja. So if I ever see a job application, it's like, we need a coder who's a rockstar ninja wizard. I'm like, yeah, piss off. You don't need me. It's about being cool with each other. It's about having a little bit of humility and taking that step to learn new things, not just assuming that we know everything already. So I want you to read these next few slides on your own. This is a little assignment here. Thank you very much. I think we have a couple of minutes for questions. Does anybody have any questions? Right here. What do I think about .NET? So it's dead. No, I actually, before I became a Ruby programmer, the company I was working for had the choice to either go from Visual Fox Pro to Ruby, which they liked because Postgres works similar to Fox Pro, and but it's not Microsoft, or go to .NET because it's Microsoft and we could stay safe. At that time, .NET was very early on. It was kind of clunky and not usable in the way that we wanted to use it, but it's come a long way. The whole Microsoft open source steps that they've taken, putting things up on GitHub, making them available, making Visual Studio available to anyone. I actually had a friend of mine tell me Visual Studio is the best IDE, the best for Node.js, specifically for Node.js. He's like, that's all I've used in it so far, so it's awesome for Node.js. I'm like, that's really cool. And at the same time, .NET has come so far. It's not my preferred language of choice, but it's very powerful and it can do a lot of things. I think it's not something we should discount just because it's a Microsoft, environment. Anybody else? I have a question for you, real quick. I'll get to you. Did everybody know who those two people were? Who you are not? All right, let me go back. So everyone knows who this is, yes? Alan Turing. I do a whole other talk about Alan Turing. He's like my favorite. This is my other favorite. I've learned from my daughter you can have two favorites. You can have many best friends. It's very complicated. But this is Grace Hopper. If you don't know who Grace Hopper is, look up Grace Hopper. She's one of the most important people in computer programming. You wouldn't even understand what a bug was if it weren't for Grace Hopper, who literally found a bug in a machine, and that's why they're called that. You had a question? Yeah, exactly. So he's saying, so we have all these JSs, and he's saying, so you should stay with the safe language and keep up with new things. Yes, it's not easy. You'll notice at no point in time during this talk that I say, yeah, it's totally easy because you have all this free time and you can do whatever you want. No, it's not easy. You kind of have to pick your poison and say, like, I would like to look into Node.js today. I'm a Perl developer, but I'm going to look into Node.js after work for a couple hours. I'll do a tutorial or something and check it out. Or, I've been doing PHP for 7 years in my day job. I'm going to go to tryruby.org and see how that works, see what Ruby's all about. Or, I'll buy a book or something like that. Like, yeah, a lot of it's going to be in your free time. But a lot of it's, in some ways, a little bit easy. You can go to the local meetup group, and there's people there that will help you out. I guarantee that whatever you're interested in, there's probably a meetup somewhere near you that will do it. And if there's not one near you, guess what? You're about to start a meetup. Any other questions?
Any suggestions for cross-tech communities?
Cross-tech communities. I think one of the biggest things is participation. So, okay, so how to put this? So there's there's a Slack channel for Ruby and PHP. There's IRC, rooms for all of this stuff. But there's no place it's like, I just want to talk code. I just want to talk about what's cool in something else, even though I don't actually do that every day. The best way to do it is to kind of, start with Twitter. I know not everybody loves Twitter, but you start with Twitter, and you start following some people that you would never follow before. You look into it, and you say, all right, I want to get into Elixir, so I'm going to follow Johnny Wynn, because Johnny Wynn is the head of the Elixir Fountain. He runs a conference called Elixir Days. He's probably easy to get a hold of, and I can start talking to him. So you find that one person you're interested in talking to. And then you start the chat back and forth. And then maybe once you get that and you realize maybe there's some more local people you could talk to, and maybe one of these people that you've contacted on Twitter knows someone in your area. That's totally possible. You start talking to these people. Then maybe you start instead of having a Ruby meetup once a month, you have a code meetup once a month. One of the things that we did, I'm from Buffalo, New York, and one of the things that we did there was a thing where basically it was like an open code event. It was a meetup where no matter what language you code in, you were welcome. And there would be a fish bowl or a candy bowl with a bunch of suggestions folded up on pieces of paper, little things, nothing important. And we started this, it was called Open Hack. And we started this literally over beers. We were like, next month, screw the Ruby meetup, we're not doing it. We're going to do this Open Hack thing. This seems like a great idea. Yeah, it does. There's more than a couple of beers. There was a lot of beers. And we found that, it was pretty interesting. We got .NET developers, we got Perl developers, we got JavaScript developers, we got Ruby developers. That was our first meetup. There were 12 of us. It's not a lot of people. Everybody writes down a little idea, tosses in the bowl, pick one out. And now we start coding on this. And I'm going to start coding it in Ruby, and you're going to start coding it in .NET. And what we found was a lot of people, you're coding, and then you're like, oh, so that's how you do this. That's interesting. So this slightly drunk idea kind of took off, unbeknownst to myself and the other creator. And at the time, I was working at Engine Yard, and this blog post came out. It's like, Open Hack, get yourself an Open Hack. And I was like, oh, cool, people know about Open Hack. And it listed the top 12 Open Hacks in the world. And I was like, whoa, this is 3 months after we started. I was like, what the hell is going on? We literally had no idea. There was one in Amsterdam. There was one in Austin, Texas. There was one in San Francisco. There were apparently 50 Open Hacks all over the world that had taken our explanation, our little, here's our documentation code of conduct on how to run an Open Hack, and forked it 200 times. And we were amazed. So that's another good way, is you just go to events that are not specific. This is a great example. There's so many different things going on here. And yeah, I mean, you have to buy a ticket. A meetup's a little bit easier. It's usually you chip in for some pizza or whatever. But it's a great way to get a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds all in one place. Anybody else? If not, I will be around. Again, there are stickers. There's my business card. I have business cards. I'm really excited about this, so please take one. I love handing them out. But thank you very much.